Hello, this is the second in a series of 4 short videos that I'm making about my book, A Year on the Ethels, A Life in the Hills. And in this one, I want to talk particularly about what's the second part of that title, A Life in the Hills. And I'm going to talk about climbing and mountaineering. Or more specifically, I'm going to talk about writing about climbing and mountaineering. Plenty of people write about those subjects, and I wanted in here to talk specifically about my engagement with these activities through writing. And I'm going to start by reading a short piece here from the book, and it says, in the late 1980s, I published a booklet of 10 poems and essays called Hanging in the Balance, which examined both the world of rock climbing, with its dangers and delights, and personal matters around the ending of my marriage. It felt like a risky undertaking. The climbing material, because in the fiercely competitive and very male culture of that period, an at best average climber should not intrude into the preserve of the elite and might expect a contemptuous response if he dared to do so. And the personal stuff, well, we all know how indulgent or unethical such writing can easily become. But I took the risk. I was writing about risk after all, and I published. And here's the result of that publishing. It's a little self-published book, written on those daisy wheel printers, I think they were called, ghastly typeface, tiny, awful font and all the rest of it. But I published this little book and I sent it off to various magazines to see whether they'd review it. Of course, when you do that, not a lot happens for months and months, and you've got plenty of time to regret your decision. But then this one came from a magazine called Outdoor Action. And it says that Hanging in the Balance is a slender, home-produced volume of prose and poetry by keen climber Andy Miller. It then says there's some pretty mixed offerings in the 22-page pamphlet. An essay on the dangers of climbing, Hanging in the Balance, is very effective, and one of the longer poems, Purchase on Renewal, works particularly well. Much of the rest of the book is embarrassingly personal, dealing with marriage, divorce, and depression. It never really shakes off the air of having been written by a member of a creative writing group. So that was showing me really, and my worst fears had come true. But then in Mountain magazine, which was the leading British publication of those days and read worldwide, there was a review from Ed Drummond. Ed Drummond, he's no longer with us, but he was legendary, a notable, fearless British climber, but also an activist. He climbed Nelson's Column once and unfurled a banner outside of South Africa House, and also a poet. And he wrote a review, and I was just amazed. He says in here, "Who can say how hope springs? Today, like a ray of sunlight, a small book has landed on my desk. It may already be a collector's item, for there is a breath of humanity in this book. Having it in my hands for half an hour was like sitting on the grass with my back leant against a tree. It made me sway." Well, it cannot get any better than that. I was so delighted, surprised, and I didn't know what to do with all my delight. But then another one came. This was in High magazine, and it was written by Terry Gifford, who's now a professor and he was the organizer of the International Festival of Mountaineering Literature. So, you know, he knew what he was looking for. And he said, "This is the best writing I've read for ages. Better than whole books of empty narrative. This little bit of autobiography climbs through the important things in life." So I felt incredibly vindicated and obviously delighted with those results. And I'm quoting that now just to say that, you know, it was about risk taking, and I didn't know whether what I was writing was any good at all. And these were people who didn't know me, I didn't know them, so it wasn't old mates just looking after their own. And it made me realise that I probably did have something to say about climbing in writing as a middle grade climber, as I called myself. And so that was the beginning really of this journey for me. I was very buoyed up by the responses to this little book, and a couple of the chapters were subsequently published in mountaineering magazines, and some of the poems went on to poetry magazines as well. And then time passed and I was doing other things, and this kind of gradually faded from memory, and in some ways I thought no more about it until 30 years later. I had an email from somebody called Martin Coxis from the British Mountaineering Council, and he was trying to track me down through a tenuous route through email contacts to ask whether he could include some pieces from my little book in this wonderful guidebook that he was writing to the Northern Peak District. This is where the Ethels come back in again, because I hadn't been to this region, but he wanted to include some of my writing in here. I was absolutely delighted. This is a beautiful book, and it's just worth it for the photos, even if you're not a climber. And what an honour to be included in there. So it made me think that there was currency still in my writing. And when we come to this one, I've included a couple of chapters. I've taken the opportunity to just edit them and tidy them up and bring them a little bit more up to date. A couple of the chapters from Hanging in the Balance in here, but a lot of this is very, very new stuff. Now, I don't have time in a short video really to give a very detailed overview of what's in here. I've talked about its genesis really, but let me just tell you a little bit about it. I have wanted to describe landscape, as I've said, to describe adventure, to try to pin down some of the real delights about climbing. What is it that people get out of climbing? I mean, everyone's had a go at that subject. Well, I've had a go at it too. And I've tried to write about it in here, not directly in a kind of factual way, but to hint at it and describe it in terms of stories and anecdotes that I've given in here. I've also been very keen to write about people, and you know, there are half a dozen people who I've climbed with who are good friends, some of whom, you know, those friendships have lasted a lifetime. They're not all either with us now because we're all getting on a bit, but I've wanted to kind of talk about the quality of friendship and the strength of it when you are engaged in the kind of activities in the mountains that we have been. So for me, it's been an opportunity to revisit those people and the fantastic times we spent together. Let me just, because this is supposed to be an overview, run through very quickly the index page to give you an idea of what I'm writing about. I can't say everything here. So there's all the stuff on the Ethels, and I'll talk about that in a different video. But then what I've got in here in terms of my mountaineering, walking and rock climbing experience, it starts in 1963 and it talks about trekking across Dartmoor and lightweight camping as a schoolboy. It talks about, again as a schoolboy, climbing on the Dorset Cliffs with somebody who was doing first ascents at Lulworth Cove in Portland, Bob Shepton, a legendary figure who I just managed to bump into by chance at a youth club, and he got me rock climbing. He was an impressive, still is, an impressive person, and you know, quite fundamental in terms of helping steer the early years of my life. I've talked about coming to Derbyshire and Froggatt Edge for the very first time in 1967, the furthest north I'd ever been. I talked about going to the Ogwen Valley in North Wales twice, both utterly miserable occasions, wet, damp, cold, mist, snow, rain, fantastic. Meeting lifelong friends through those expeditions. Climbing my first very severe graded climb, Shadrach, at Traumatic, and it's no longer there. It's fallen down. It's been knocked down, but it was a classic climb, and we did it. First trip to Glencoe, Scotland, Cornwall. I've tried to just who can resist the kind of wonderful warm ochre slabs and those wonderful sea cliffs. So I've tried to do them justice in the writing. And then overnight bivouac on Carnarth Llewellyn in 1969 in a snow hole, just for the fun really. Going to the Alps, going to the Skye. Then I was good friends with Mark Vallance, and I was shown a prototype for a friend in absolute confidence that I was to say nothing, and he said it was going to revolutionise climbing. I thought he was making a big mistake, investing everything, remortgaging his house, giving up his job. So I got that one wrong. He went on to be incredibly successful with it, but I've written about the kind of irony of that very first meeting and having these devices revealed to me in secret. I talked about kind of getting worse at climbing when I had a young family and a job and lots of work to do on a house, and then getting back into it by chance really, and how wonderful it was getting back into it. Living in Buxton, climbing much more regularly after work, then hanging in the balance, going to Colorado, being introduced to some fantastic climbing in Colorado, and then later on doing the Annapurna circuit, do the Tour de Mont Blanc on my own, and then climb back home, climbing in Dovedale, going to the High Sierra in California, Mount Whitney, Tuolumne Meadows, then a really serious incident on the Grand Comban in the Alps, when I really nearly met the end then. Climbing on High Tor just down the road from where I live in Derbyshire, and the hardest route I'd ever done, and the most it really kind of brought home to me again what the kind of sheer delight rock climbing can bring that isn't replicated anywhere else in life, I don't think. The Tour de Monte Rosa, very scary, unroped glacier crossing at the end, and I've tried to kind of illustrate the drama of that. And then I finished with a kind of what I hope is humorous kind of. My wife bought me a refresher session at the local climbing wall for my 70th birthday, and I had to go along and be humble and learn, and I needed to be humble because there were things I had got sloppy on or forgotten, but most of the time we started talking, myself and the instructor, and although an hour was paid for, most of that hour was spent talking about my climbing history, and we hardly got off the ground on it, but it was good fun. And I finally finished with two obituaries for friends of mine who have died not in climbing or whatever through illness in later years, and I've just written about them as special people and what they've meant to me to round the thing off. So that's very quickly a kind of indication of what's in here, particularly from a mountaineering and climbing point of view, and I'll do more about the Ethels themselves and then about the whole business about memoir in the third and fourth video. So thank you.